4 words can bring our spiritual growth to a screeching halt? Well, the 4 words would be, I already know that. I already know that. Now, think about how many times that we've said that to someone or thought it. You know, oh, I already know that. I already know that. After saying or thinking those 4 words, what we do is we close down our openness to receive more of the good, more of the growth that Spirit always has there to provide us with. So right now we are in a time of evolution of mankind, that we need to get really honest and to really clarify what is our prosperity consciousness. What is it really? We talk about it all the time. Are we really honest with ourselves? Have we really cleared away what is our prosperity consciousness? It's time, please, to finally master this one. Master this one so that we can get on with living our lives. Like expressing our brilliance, sharing our gifts, making the world a world that works for everyone. We can get the prosperity going, and then we can partake of all of the good and share the gifts that we all have to give to each other, expressing ourselves without being so concerned about where the next meal is coming from or how I'm going to pay all the bills this month. That's deepening into our prosperity consciousness. And so this month we're going to be talking about one of the wealthiest men in the Bible for the whole month. In fact, one goes into October. And this scripture and Moses actually are going to help us really move into that whole idea of expanding and clarifying our prosperity consciousness. So this is a book, The Millionaire Moses, that was written by Catherine Ponder, who is like the queen of prosperity books. And she's written many, 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 many prosperity books. But this one is so interesting. And it's just really, really exciting. It really is. So today we're going to lay the groundwork by looking at 3 40-year time periods in Moses' life. Because we always think there's just the one in the wilderness, 40 years in the wilderness. But there were actually 3. So this morning we will begin to see how these 3 periods of growth can apply to us, how we can use them in our lives. Ready? Let's go. Let's go. Okay, before we start, let us take a moment to establish something that's really important. Who remembers, because I've said this a few times, what 40 stands for metaphysically? Does anybody remember? You kind of know. All the time it takes for transformation. 40 in the Bible is repeated over and over again. All the time it takes for transformation. You'll notice a lot of things end in 40. And 40 is really the figurative example. Noah and company spent 40 days on the ark. Buddha spent 40 days under the Bodhi tree. Jesus spent 40 days being tempted. And it was also 40 days between his resurrection and his ascension. And Moses and the Israelites spent 40 years wandering the wilderness. So these are just a few of the examples. And I can think in personal stuff of 40 that keeps coming up. And 40 really is, it feels like, and it's a great example of the completion. All it takes to transform, to make our transformation. So we don't have to take that absolutely literally, 40, but it is a great example of 40 represents the completion, the transformation of consciousness. Moses had 3 such periods in his life of 40. The first was the Egyptian period. The second was the Median desert experience. And finally, the well-known wilderness, 40 years period. So the first period we're going to talk about and how it applies to us in our lives. It's all about clarifying our prosperity consciousness and really deepening into it. So Moses' first period was spent as an adopted son of a very, very, very wealthy man. In fact, he was the richest man alive. King Pharaoh. Yeah. in this period. This is how he was brought up. He was exposed to immense wealth, and material wealth, lots of really opulent things. He lived in opulence, and he grew up appreciating and expecting the finer things in life. He didn't think, and there was nothing wrong with any of this, but he was never told that money's the root of all evil. You don't deserve it. Money doesn't grow on trees, or I'll never be good enough to get this. You know, this is kind of like something that we might have heard. But all those things, he never heard of those things, so they weren't in his consciousness. And admittedly, this gives him a bit of advantage, but not an insurmountable advantage. Our lesson here is that if we are not comfortable with our material wealth, then get comfortable now. It's good. It's good. Material stuff is good. It's good. You deserve all that you desire to create. You deserve it. So maybe you give yourself, just to get into that whole consciousness, give yourself a day of opulence. Maybe it's a spa day, or maybe it's walking through a fabulous store, which I just love to do. Or even, I like to even look at the really great catalogs that come. I get them from the Neiman Marcus and all that, because I feel so opulent. You know, we use our fantasy, but the law, remember the substance, the law, is responding to that. So it doesn't know if it's real or not real, but it's going to manifest that in my life. Plus it raises my vibration, it raises my prosperity consciousness. And maybe all you do is sit out in nature. And Ernest Holmes talks about the wasteful extravagance of Mother Nature. It's wasteful. It's just there is no lack and limitation in Mother Nature. There is more than enough. So that is one way of moving yourself into that feeling of opulence, of prosperity. More than having the outer experience, which is good, it's good, Moses was given also instructions on the inner laws of prosperity and how to use them. Everything we'll be talking about this month is going to be dealing with deepening into our inner use of these principles. Because as we know, everything is an inside job, right? It all manifests, but again, we're always going to have to do the work internally. So let me touch very briefly on the foundational secret that he was taught, and that we all must get. This is really important for all of us to get this. Substance is the key to all wealth. Substance is the key to all wealth. This is a critically important point, and we're going to discuss this. A secret, then, that is not really a secret, and then it reminds me, and I have a reading from Wallace Wattles' book, but Rhonda Burns, who wrote The Secret, which we're actually going to be showing the old version of The Secret next month. But when she first got involved in New Thought and wrote her book, Wallace Wattles was the first person that she read. She was given that book, and that opened her eyes. But he really gets into substance. And it's really important for us to, look what happened to her. It's really important for us to understand substance, and that is the key. It is the absolute key to all wealth. So what is substance? It's really interesting that in her book, which I do have with me, The Millionaire Moses, she doesn't really define substance. But as I said, Wallace Wattles' book, which we'll be reading in the Prosperity Plus class next week, he talks a lot about substance. And I have a reading from him, a quote from him, about substance to kind of get us into that frame. He writes, everything, this is from 1910, The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace Wattles, everything we see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New things are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving. But all are made out of one thing. There is no limit, he writes, to this formless substance. The spaces in, through, and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with this original substance. The raw material of all things 10,000 times more than we could ever imagine, and we still will not have exhausted this supply of universal raw material. The formless substance, he says, is alive and is always impelled toward more life, which we discussed. We're always becoming more. We don't stop. If you stop, you're in stagnation. So we're always becoming more. What is substance then? What is it? Well, substance is God. God. It's the universal energy source, whatever you are calling this great I am. It is that substance that creates. It's the creative substance. So anything that you read by New Thought writers or in this spiritual realm, they're going to be talking about this universal good. The universal good, we keep hearing it over and over again. But that universal good is the substance. It's that which we cannot see, but we create out of it. It gives us back exactly what we put into it, what we think, what we feel. And it's limitless. It's absolutely limitless. So the prosperity secret, okay, is based on all wealth and of all wealth. And Moses learned this in his first 40 years on this planet. And this is what we are deepening into, learning to trust that this universal supply of good is the substance through which we create and manifest our lives out of it. So this first period, Moses gained an appreciation of and a comfort with the outer material wealth, while he started to acquire information and knowledge about that internal substance, that creative method, because it's a balance between the external and the internal, a balance between the spiritual and the material world. It always needs to be in balance, but this is how we truly create. And so it's the clarity, and we're going to spend like 5 weeks on this, because we want to get clear, don't we? Yes. It's enough already, come on. We want to get clear about this prosperity consciousness. Clarify, be honest with ourselves. What are we really thinking? Catch what we're thinking. You know, do that mind check. Figure it out. What are we thinking? So, where are you in all of this? If you really were to be reflective and think about, what am I thinking? What am I creating in my life? Look around. Do you have balance? Do you feel that you have balance? It's the key. So the first period in Moses' life was a time of mental and intellectual development. And it was critically important time for Moses, and with critical ideas for us as well, that it was only the beginning of complete transformation. The beginning. Something happened to end that period, though, and that also has a powerful message for us. He saw something in his life and the lives of those around him that he absolutely just couldn't stand. He couldn't bear it. And what it was is that he was objecting to the way that the Egyptians treated the Israelites. And so what he did was he killed one of the Egyptian soldiers, and then he had to flee Egypt. He saw around in his life and the lives of those that he didn't like, and the stuff that he could not, that he abhorred, and he wanted to get rid of it. Remember that. He wanted to get rid of it. And he used force to get rid of it. And if we only learn about our co-creative ability from the mental and intellectual standpoint, we too might make the same mistake, because you'll see it's a mistake. And a lot of us have made this mistake of using force, where we will co-create our lives with force. Remember, force is resistance. And I know that once I stopped trying to make things happen, to force things to be the way I thought they should be, and I stepped back from that, that's when things started to flow back into my back. They were never there before, because I was always in resistance, trying to make it. So we're taught to try to make it happen. So now it's just relaxing and letting it come, knowing, trusting, having the faith that This is effortless manifestation. What does that mean? We keep reading effortless. It means that we don't force things to happen. We don't force. And that was his big lesson in that first part of his life too. Was that negative reaction, not to react, with that negative reaction of trying to force things to happen. So the second period is the Median desert experience. So when Moses fled Egypt, he entered into the second 40 years of transformation, or the second period of his life. And this is called the Median desert period. And he had brought with him into this second period of his life his prosperity consciousness. Remember, he came from a very, very wealthy family, so he already had that going. And it was in this period that he took the time, though, to meditate, to go within, to reflect into the deeper powers that lay within. And the word Midian means strife and contention. Strife and contention. So Moses needed that quiet period that we all could use, that quiet period to reflect and to overcome the strife and contention that he was going through in his life. He realized that instead of trying to straighten out other people, I know none of us do that, he needed first to straighten out himself. You know, not if the other person changes, if the other person's habits or behavior was different. No, go within and straighten that out first. So this was the period that he encountered the burning bush, which I think most of us know about that. And from that came the voice of Jehovah. And the metaphysical interpretation of Jehovah is God within. God, we have a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. And Jehovah represents God within. God within. When Jehovah spoke to Moses through the burning bush and that whole experience, he told Moses that the universal God power was within and would guide and lead him and show him the way. And that its name was, I am that I am. So that indwelling God power was named I am. And these are two of the most powerful words one can ever speak. I am. The burning bush experience is Moses' hearing of his inner voice, his I am presence, and having a personal, intimate, heart-connecting relationship with that I am presence within. And he had always had a relationship with God, but it was an external God. Now it was within. It was internal. So as we've read or heard in the Bible, that whole experience changed his life, that he was never the same, and that when he came back from that experience, his face was illumined. He was aglow. He was a different person. We all must connect with that God within. The place of love, of peace, of harmony, of good, of limitless possibilities, of wholeness. It's there within each and every one of us, and we need to hear this repeatedly. Repeatedly, we can't hear it enough, because we're always deepening and expanding in our consciousness of this good, and this good is the substance of prosperity in its every form in our lives. There's more, and there's much more, to creating wealth. When Moses doubted his ability to get his followers out of Egypt, Jehovah gave him a rod to help him. And when Moses lifted that rod, all blessings came forth. And when he lowered the rod, curses came forth. So your I am is your power. It's your power, that rod of power. It is the name of the God power within you. How are you using your rod of power, your I am presence, to bring about either in your life a blessing or a curse? Every time, and we talk about this in foundations class, especially the workshop, we have to be it serves us to be very aware of what we use after those two words, I am. So if we are walking around saying, I am poor, I am sick, I am not worthy, I am not whatever after it, we are then taking the name of God in vain, actually. We are cursing ourselves. We are creating the very thing that we don't want to experience in our lives. So that I am spoken upward increases our blessings. I am filled with love. I am connected to the God source within. That's how we want to use the two most powerful words that this substance, the law, responds to. Really key, really key. So every time you say I am, have you gripped the handle of power and made through destiny your things bless you? Your experiences bless you or curse you? Important to know. And the third period, the one that he's famous for, is in the wilderness. The 40 years that Moses spent in the wilderness. And this was his final period of transformation. And at first, it doesn't seem like it was a very prosperous period. You got 2 million people wandering around the desert, with nowhere to go. And sometimes it didn't look too prosperous or food-wise too filling. But it was during this time that Moses combined all that he had learned from the first two periods and then deepened tremendously. So the mission of Moses during this last third period of transformation then was to demonstrate and teach the Hebrews that God was the source of their supply. God was the source of their supply. And he was to teach them how to trust God. That was his mission. As the source of his, the only source of supply for any of us. So for all of us, if that is the only thing we can get today, would be that God is the source and supply of all my good this day, today. All my needs are met today. That would be the greatest lesson that we could ever hold in our minds and our hearts. That God is the source of all my good. Right here, right now, in this moment, not in the future, not in that. Right here, right now, God is the source. This universal substance, this source of all good, which is that substance, is the supply for today. For today. And that's all we all have, is today. Remember that. One day at a time for your supply. One day at a time, and it shall be provided. Having that faith and that trust then, it shall be provided. It's the way the substance of the law works. So just please don't go into the future too much. We can plan stuff from this now moment, but when we go into worry and fear, it's always in the future. What if? God is my source this day, and of all good supply. This day, right here, right now, all of my needs are met. So this third period of 40 years in Moses' life then, this transformative period, had ups and downs, as a lot of us know that when we start doing this spiritual work, it's like, oh Lord, I thought I was over all this stuff. We start having more ups and more downs. The contrast helps us expand. That's what we have to remember. The contrast of what we don't want leads us into what we do want. Plus, we are anchoring into that inner connection, that relationship with that indwelling God self that is in each and every one of us. And that becomes stronger. And once that gets stronger, that doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It just helps it expand and transform even more. So the great learnings of the staying power came forth from this whole third period where Moses led the Israelites, through this what looked like bondage and what looked like they were lost in this universe, this wilderness. So now we're going to take these three periods, these 3 40-year periods of Moses' life as a metaphor for our journey that we are on right now, connecting with the internal creative power. So the very first metaphor would be then we learn about the power of thought intellectually and perhaps rush forth to use it on others. This is what we do, to manipulate and to control conditions. Or we first find out we can do these things. These little children do it all the time. They can make things happen. They can do these conditions. They're just going to make it happen. But if we find that this causes us strife as we get mature a little bit, and that life is unsatisfying, this is what Moses kind of learned. You know, he had the whole wealthy, prosperity, opulent consciousness, which he never lost, with him, but then he tried to force something to be the way he wanted it to be. So then he moved on to the second phase of his transformation, and that this causes us to turn within, to begin overcoming the strife and contention. As we do, our connection to that indwelling divine self strengthens. It becomes stronger, and life is good. Life is good. And then we begin to experience, get to that life is good plateau, and we could begin to experience those ups and downs in life. And this is the smooth, not everything is as smooth sailing as we thought it would be. Once we reach a certain point, everything is just going to fall in, and it doesn't work right. Life happens so that we can expand, grow. Yeah. Stuff happens. What are you going to do? Well, what you can do is you can choose. You always have that choice. So choosing that there is a limitless source of good, the substance of God that is always present. This is the spiritual truth. The basis of our teaching is that the substance is something that we can use to create our lives, to choose from a place where we are more in alignment with our integrity, with our courage, with that good that does exist. So for now, I want to ask, how are you using after the words I am? How are you using that in your life? Start to pay attention to what you're following the I am with. Go to, if you don't feel well, just go to I don't feel, or I feel upset. It changes everything, the way the substance responds. This is the creative process that we're speaking of. This is how we create, through this law, through this substance of God's good. And so this morning, before we go on for this whole month, we're going to be going into Millionaire Moses' whole philosophy, and it's really a great book. It really is a great book. And we're going to have a book table the first week in October, so when I start doing talk space, yeah! Liz manifested, one of our practitioners in training, manifested that day off. And it's been one of her dreams. So we'll be having these books available for you to purchase. So what I would like to do, and this is right out of Catherine Ponder's book, but I thought it would be a really great way for us to close this talk today, is I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. And we're going to do a bunch of affirmative statements, and I want you to use them after me. I am health, strength, and peace.
I am health, strength, and peace.
I am happiness and prosperity.
I am happiness and prosperity.
I am strong, well, and vital.
I am strong, well, and vital.
I am beautiful, serene, and poised.
I am beautiful, serene, and poised.
I am eternally youthful.
I am eternally youthful.
I am happy and free.
I am happy and free.
I am open and receptive to my highest good.
I am open and receptive to my highest good.
In mind, body, and financial affairs.
In mind, body, and financial affairs.
Here and now, where I am.
Here and now, where I am.
Good things happen.
Good things happen.
Because I am one with God.
Because I am one with God.
And so it is.
And so it is.